at graphic design, and all my ideas are trash. Uh,
The covers. Oh, but you gave her the idea, right?
Not for this cover. So I gave Regina the idea for the A Touch of Darkness part, like the florals and the filigree, which everyone does now. So we're not doing that anymore. So I'm over it. But no, for this one, for Retribution, I was like, I don't know, maybe we do like a skull for death or something. And she tried it, and I was like, that looks stupid. And then Emily goes, what about a bite it? And I was like, duh, like what the fuck? It's like Hades' symbol. So we did it, and it was beautiful. It's so pretty. And it looks even better in person. So yeah.
Well, hi everyone, surprise. I was like, it was funny. I was going to, this is what happened. Okay. Let me back this up for anyone who's like, you didn't tell us that Scarlett was coming. What the heck? So you didn't see on Scarlett's Instagram account, she was in Austin yesterday, and I didn't notice this until I got home, and I was like, literally signing books at like my local Barnes and Noble. I was like, wait, hold on. I'm like, I didn't know you were here. And so she was like, when's your book club meeting? I was like, tomorrow. She's like, oh, I might pop in. So that's why I told you guys. I was like, oh, you may want to come, because I knew you guys would have a little bit of fun. So I wanted to bring everyone here and just, we're going to talk a little bit about Game of Fate. And then I know we have a spoiler chat on Thursday. So if there's anything you want us to repeat, we can. This recording, we're just going to save for our Patreon conversation. So I'll upload this one on Patreon. Since we're going to be talking on Thursday, it'll be a fun duo. But I just wanted to come in here and say hi to all y'all. I know for some of you, it was your very first time reading A Touch of Darkness and A Game of Fate. Did you guys know? I know for some of you, it was like reread session, but like for anyone, was it their first time?
It was my first time reading it.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Did you guys like it?
Cool.
I read each book in a day, so yeah.
I was like,
that's all I did.
You can lie since I'm here, and then tell the truth later.
Say like you didn't, right? I'm assuming you liked it. I mean, let me tell you, what's funny too is we did have some really great conversations in the Discord about like Scarlett, you and I were talking earlier about Ruin. And how like, some people find Persephone annoying. And we did have some conversations about it. And I was like, I challenge you to think outside the box when you read this book. And you guys were really great about it. Like you really did. And you really took that and like really loved it. So I appreciate you guys, for having an open mind and having that discussion, because I think a lot of people think that. And then they're like, oh, wait, but she wasn't. It's just something that I heard and didn't realize. So
yeah, people have a lot of feelings about Ruin. And when it first came out, people were very unhappy with it.
Yeah.
And over time, it's become people's favorite book. But it's why I like to explain like my personal, like I'm not a person who can separate from my books emotionally.
Yeah.
And I tell the story all the time that Ruin helped me lose my dad. And it's a hard story because it's, what happened in Ruin is I finished that book earlier in the year of 2020, and it was published in April, and I lost my dad in November of 2020, and I lost him a very similar way to how Persephone loses Lexa in that book. And and I would not have been able to take him off the bench if I hadn't written Persephone's experience with death. And so it has a lot of meaning to me. And it's very painful when people think of Persephone as someone who is annoying, because I feel like they're like, oh, well, you're annoying, because, I associate so closely with her. Yeah. So it has a lot of meaning to me. It definitely helped me make that decision. And it's never an easy decision to let someone you love go.
No. To ask you, to talk a little bit about A Game of Fate, I know now the publication order, it was A Touch of Darkness, A Touch of Ruin, and then A Game of Fate, or was so at what point did you decide that you wanted to write the Hades point of view?
Well, after Ruin came out, people just started asking for Hades' point of view of A Touch of Darkness, and I felt like I could write it really quickly, and I did, because Ruin came out in April, and I had A Game of Fate out by September.
Oh my God. So,
not a very long span of time, but I had already had in my head that he had the storyline with Sisyphus, and so I kind of knew what his alternate point of view would look like. So I thought, oh, you can get that done fairly quickly and then move on to Malice, but it did throw the whole publication timeline off, and it's confusing as fuck. and I'm sorry. But one day all the books will be out and no one will have this problem.
That's kind of the response I give to people. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Basically because of readers, and I think that's really cool. But I'm happy that it's turning out this way, because I think it's better to have them sort of release in tandem like that,
Yeah.
rather than having the main series out for so long and then coming back and writing from his point of view. But I think the bigger thing is that his point of view adds so much to the world, because he's a god. Like, he's been alive for over like 3 millennia, right? So he has different relationships, and he exists in the world differently, and so it really lent itself to exploring more of New Athens, the underworld, and Olympus. So it's really cool.
When you decide, so I mean, it makes sense. Like, people were just, they wanted more Hades, and who doesn't want more Hades? What was hard? What was like the most challenging part? Was it focusing on those moments in A Touch of Darkness, or was it, expanding the world of the gods and kind of letting him have his own story? Because I think that's something you do beautifully, is that it is not a retelling of A Touch of Darkness. It is his own story, and there are moments, but you get to really kind of dive into a totally different thing.
I think it's mostly just getting his voice down, getting into his head, because he's just like he is in the books. He's not very open or vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I will reference A Game of Retribution a lot because it's the most recent one I wrote. But just trying to get into that mindset was so hard. And then once I was in it, it was almost like it brought me down as a human. Like, I felt so just like sort of exhausted and depressed, and so I think that's kind of, how actors are method actors. I think I kind of am like a method writer. And so it just takes so long to get into his head, because it feels like sort of a spiral into depression.
Yeah.
I probably was kind of depressed though, because I was writing it, after a year into losing my dad. I had to revisit the loss of Lexa, which is the loss of my father, essentially. And I was very anxious about, people being bitchy about Persephone from any point of view of Hades, because every time someone gets Hades' point of view, all they want to do is like bitch about how horrible Persephone is. And right, Persephone is someone who, like, for me, helped me shed my old identity and embrace like who I truly wanted to be.
Yeah.
So she's empowering for me. So yeah, Hades is definitely just like, he's so different from Persephone. I'm very similar to him in some ways, in that, like, socially, like, I have like I have to turn off at some point. I want to say I hate people. I like people mostly, but I love my dog more. And that's Hades. Like, Hades is a millennial who kind of dislikes people and loves his dogs. And that's how I'm like Hades. But most of me identifies with Persephone. So that switch is not easy.
Yeah. And you have one more book in Hades' point of view, and then it's going to be the duel, right?
Yeah, A Game of Gods. But A Game of Gods is actually going to be from Hades, Theseus, and Dionysus's point of view. And because Malice has so much of Hades and Persephone together, like 70K of that book. And that book is about 130K words. So it's going to be very, very different from Malice. And so you guys will meet Ariadne and Dionysus in A Game of Retribution, and I love them so much. And they'll have their own like branch in Gods, and then they'll have their own book as well.
Yeah. Because I'm in the process, you guys are going to laugh at me. I'm still in the middle of rereading A Game of Fate. So for anyone who's like, but I do remember the story. Okay. Just so in case anyone asks. But the one thing I feel like I'm paying more attention to this time around is obviously the Aphrodite storyline. And I know that is something that, is coming. And I'm curious, was it inspired because of, their relationship? Because it is funny, like reading this, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see more of them. Like learn more, even though I know I get a little bit and then Malice, but
Yeah, they I'm sorry, I need a little clarification on your question. Was Aphrodite and Hephaestus?
Yeah, was this the book that made you realize you wanted to write more about them?
No, I knew from the beginning, and I always shipped Aphrodite with Hephaestus. I liked the idea that so from the very beginning, I saw this scene of them, and Hephaestus he has a prosthetic leg, and he had been tripped and he fell to his knee, and it had been when he had his arm through Aphrodite's, and he felt very embarrassed by having tripped and had fallen. But Aphrodite feels no shame for him.
Yeah.
She just wants to help him up, but he interprets it differently. So, you know, everyone who hates the miscommunication trope, which is not a trope, we should stop saying that miscommunication is a fucking trope, because it's a real life thing that fucks up relationships. So that it's really heavily featured in their story. And it's just I mean, you know, when you're given as a gift, like Aphrodite was given as a gift to Hephaestus, it's really hard to believe that that person could actually want you. And he was rejected his life, like, right, he was thrown off Olympus by Hera, right? And so there's a lot of baggage there. So I just think it's very interesting, and I'm curious to see like where that story goes. But part of that will be like how they're working through their relationship in modern times, and then a novella that illustrate, like, just goes back to when she was given to Hephaestus, and that sort of I think what led to the fallout, you know.
Yeah, because their storyline, it's funny. Every time I get like a moment with them, I'm like, please, just
they have a partnership. That's what's so interesting about them, is that they really do work as a partner, but the you know, actually acting as husband and wife, that's where they, you know, have their biggest issue. That probably is gonna, I probably honestly will draw a lot from my personal experience, you know. The reason I talk so heavily about communication is my marriage fell apart because of communication, and I grew up in a household where you were punished if you didn't communicate. And so, you know, I was in a 12-year relationship and a 5-year marriage with a man that I do care for a lot, but our communication just sucked so bad. And the only time we started to communicate is during the divorce. So I take communication, you know, and the issue of communication in books very seriously. And I will probably pull upon that in my own, you know, retelling of Aphrodite and Hephaestus, because I believe in healing that so much, right? So I have soapboxes. You could tell I have a lot of soapboxes. They include grief and communication because they're real life issues.
No, but I mean, that you can tell when you read that relationship, like there is love for the two of them, but they just don't know how to communicate it. And I think as an outsider, this is always the hard thing. As an outsider, you watch it and you're like, come on, just talk. But it's different when you're in the dynamic. Like you can't, you can't just say that.
No, I mean, and you know, I think we all can probably relate to the feeling of having like all the words built up, you know, and you can feel them in the back of your throat and your head is pulsing with them, and you just cannot say what you really need to say because you're too afraid. Because words have consequences, and once they're out in the world, you cannot take them back. So, you know, when you both suck at communication, you know, my husband or my ex-husband's family, they're deaf, right? So they have a different form of communication. So growing up, he just didn't learn, you know, how to say the things that he needed to say. And when things were said at home, right, there were arguments. So he just learned that communication led to arguments, and it was bad, right? And I learned that you get hurt if you communicate. So when you bring two people into a relationship like that and they're young, it can eventually lead to what I have. So I'm eager to explore it because I think it will be very healing for me. What will be hard for me though is to put that work out there, put so much of myself into it, put it out there, and then have people talk about, I hate this communication trope. So I will get on my soapbox a lot, and I will talk about it because I think we have to remove that language from society, essentially, which is a huge task, but we can do it.
Well, it's funny. I've never even thought about the fact of the miscommunication trope being not being a trope. Like when you brought it up, like you're right. It is much broader because it's in fact very different in each story because of the dynamics. And I think it's important that, as readers, that we just kind of realize that and we try to change the narrative around that.
Sometimes I wonder if reading has become such a critical thing.
Yes.
That we just look for the issues in books rather than, you know, trying to I don't know, immerse yourself in the story. You're just trying to find something to hate or something, you know? And I think that's kind of sad. And I come from I was a librarian for 5 years. I have an English writing background, like that's my bachelor's degree. I know what it's like to analyze literature, and I can do that very well. Which is why I say often, I'm not stupid. I know exactly what I put into my novels. But sometimes we don't need to do that. We just need to read a book, you know?
Just love a book. It's not that hard.
I think there's also something to be said for miscommunication for the sake of miscommunication versus miscommunication with a purpose. Because there are several books that I've read where I'm just like, okay, well, this has happened too often. And I don't understand like the meaning behind it. It's lost a meaning or a purpose, but that's not what you do. You write.
I don't feel like it's what I do.
No.
Other people might feel like it's what I do, you know?
No.
I think that retribution is an interesting side to Ruin because in some ways there was no time to have those conversations. I think you can look at Ruin and be like, where the fuck was Hades, right? You know? And at the end of the day, he wasn't the partner that Persephone needed while she was going through that huge loss.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of that situation. But I got a really wonderful review from Publishers Weekly, except that the person commented that Persephone was frustrating. And, my go-to is like, I want to educate you about this. Yeah. I'm always like, can I educate you about, but you obviously can't do that for everyone. I just feel personally like offended every time I hear it because I'm like, that's my life.
Yeah.
So, but that's just how I am as an author. I wrote a post about this the other day, some of you might have seen, but I'm not someone who, when I put a book out in the world, it doesn't belong to the readers. It's still my book. It's still, it's a piece of my soul that I like literally just like put on paper for everyone to read, So it's very different experience for me.
It's funny too, because actually while I was going, like I was trying to find something and I came across an old post of yours from last year where you talked about negative reviews, and you wrote this really beautiful thing about, negative reviews are important in terms of like constructive criticism, but don't take away that experience from someone who finds value in the story.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I personally love. Like, I think a negative review shouldn't be like, oh, I'm nitpicking this book, but it should just be like, as for me, it just wasn't for me, and this is why. But for you, you may love it, and I'm not going to judge you for that. Like, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, which is, when you were like, people overanalyze books. Yeah. Like, what happened to just loving a book and then analyzing it because you love it? Like, instead of just tearing it apart, like, don't find the things that you want to rip apart. Find the things you love and the joy.
I think I come from it like as a librarian, I really have this urge to teach people how to do proper reader's advisory, which is what you do when you write reviews. And the thing about reader's advisory is you're always going to tell people like, these are the things that I liked about it, and these are the things that weren't my thing. Or when you're conducting actual reader's advisory, you say like, okay, what was the last book you read? What did you like about it?
Yeah.
And if they list all the things that they liked about it, then you can ask, what didn't you like about it? But you should be able to find a book for them that they liked, that they will like, based on just the likes. You don't have to mention the things you don't like.
Yeah.
But my problem with negative reviews is when I am tagged in them, because if you want those reviews to be for you as readers, you do not tag the author. Absolutely not, because that becomes, then you're putting it in MySpace and it's no longer just for readers.
It's disturbing.
So, unfortunately, I have taken away the ability for anyone to tag me in anything unless they follow me, because it just happened too often. And the last one like broke me. Like, if you're in a really bad spot mentally and then someone posts something like that's just not cool. Like, there's a difference between like a cool negative review and like a stupid like hateful review. It like fucked up my whole fucking day, and I was like, I'm done. I text my assistant, I was like, turn it off. I can't do it anymore. I will never be able to do this job. If I keep it going, I cannot do it. But it's a part of the job. But here's the thing, like, I don't sign up. Like, I didn't sign up for this job to be like eviscerated on the daily. So just took it away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like, a big thing that we talk about a lot in our Discord and, just I say with all my book friends is you can have a negative review, but it needs to be constructive. It needs to be something that's helpful for a reader, not to rip apart the author, because you're right. It's your piece. You wrote it. It's your heart and soul. And I want to make sure you feel loved and protected regardless, because that is the most important thing. And so, yeah, I think it's
I do
gross. And
appreciate that.
I do. Yeah. I will, like, because someone will be like, I don't want, I want to talk about this book. And I'm like, yeah, talk negatively about it. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't rip it apart. Remember that there's someone on the other side that poured their heart and soul and loves it with all their heart, and respect that. So
yeah, there's this idea that like like these constructive reviews will help authors, but I don't get any of my feedback from reviews. I don't, and I never will.
good.
I have a team.
Good.
I have an editor. I will never. So I don't need it. And I feel kind of bad saying that, but here's the thing, like at some point, like maybe as an indie author, like that's something, maybe. But it's not the case for me. So I don't need it. And other authors probably don't either. It's, and that's, I mean, it's like reviews are either for readers or they're for readers. So don't even think that when you include like critiques for your authors that's the point, because it's not.
Yeah, don't be an asshole. That's like the basic rule of the internet. Don't be an asshole. Like, come on.
I think I'm just on it because like I feel like everyone needs compassion right now, and I think I really think about that because of COVID, and I was someone who was like hardcore affected by COVID because my dad died of COVID, and I just like I think about everyone who, even if you didn't lose someone during COVID, you still probably have some sort of trauma associated with that, and like how the fuck are you coping with it if you get on the internet every day and people are mean? It's hard enough. Like this world is hard enough. Like, and then, so I just think about that every day. Like if I see something hateful about like said to one of my friends or something, I'm like, oh God, I wish that was a lot more kind.
Yeah. I think my only critique for your books is I just want more Hermes because I love him so much. But
there's a lot of good parts in here.
He's listen, Hermes is the best. Like you always
there's a scene where he like brushes gold dust onto Hades' chest for this event thing, and it's so funny, and I love it so much. Hades says, I don't understand why I have to do this, and he said, well, clothing is optional, and he's like, not the clothing, the gold dust. So anyway, my assistant's over here laughing at me. But I can't wait for you guys to
we're probably gonna have to have a spoiler conversation about it because everyone's gonna be just so excited to talk about it.
I love it.
Yeah, always. Okay, well, I've hogged up a lot of time. Does anyone have questions or anything they want to ask? I feel like, Scarlett and I are gonna be talking on Thursday, so we'll be having all these fun conversations, reminding everyone about A Game of Fate, because I know not everyone did the reread. So you guys are the golden children. You did. So but yeah, go ahead, anyone's welcome to jump in. Anything?
I just wanted to say I did not find Persephone annoying at all. Like I'm around her age, so I was like, she's just a normal person my age. I was like, she's just like a normal college kid, and like there's big things happening to like a normal college kid. So like, yeah, she'd be like annoyed about this situation, but she's a real person. Like obviously she's not real, but she's a real person.
Well, I don't know about that. She feels real to me.
She feels very real.
Like she's just real. I just thought she was real.
Yeah,
like I related to her.
Really great because like Demeter is like my mom. My mom is bipolar and she is narcissist, and she gave me a lot of anxiety around just doing stupid shit, like just going to the fucking movies with my friends. Like I would get so much anxiety worked up about just like asking her if I could go. And so when I got to college, I had all these weird belief systems that my parents had like imposed upon me. And in college is when I was able to let them go. And that's what Persephone's going through. She's just like in college, learning what she actually believes and shedding all of that old shit. And it's something that we all go through when we go like leave our family and, become who we're meant to be. And so I love that you said that, because I do see some people saying that, like, oh yeah, like Persephone's, she's 24, she's in college, this is the right age to be going through these things. And sometimes I think people's critique of Persephone is because they may not have had the kind of life that I have had. And for that, I'm very grateful that they have not. But I also think we have to be very mindful and put ourselves in other people's shoes, or we cannot have compassion for the world.
We have to be tolerant of everyone goes through different ways of life, and you have to know that, and it shapes the person.
In case you cannot tell, my childhood was traumatic.
Yeah. I mean, it's, and then you don't realize it until
I'm fine.
right? You don't realize it till you're adult, and you're like, oh,
you're like,
right.
what the fuck did I do?
Therapy is a godsend.
Therapy and a lot of other things.
Right? So true.
It's so true. Oh my gosh.
Narcissistic mothers are the best.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh God. My mom is something else, man. She doesn't even know what I do. Like, she has no clue.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, she knows I'm a writer, but she has no like concept of like anything. She forgot my birthday, y'all. Like, that's my mom.
Oh my gosh.
She's a fucker, man.
Does she know like how successful you are, and like all, like, does she understand that?
No, there's no. In fact, my sister was the one who had to be like, you never even ask her about like her life. And so I could tell when like my sister went off on her about it. And then my mom like called me after that and was like, so how's work? And I'm like, no, you don't do this. Yeah. Someone bitched at you and that's why you're calling about this. So no, she has no clue. No clue.
Yeah. And then she randomly comes across your book and she's like,
Oh, she won't ever see. Yeah, no, that'll never happen either.
Oh, good.
No, she's just, yeah. My mom, she's a different person. She's like an alien, I think, sometimes.
That's fair.
She's very hard to explain.
That's fair, honestly. Okay, anyone else got like something fun? Go for it.
I'm gonna swim on in here.
Go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna say some comments and then end it with a question, okay? Because I got a lot. Number one, I just love you, Scarlett. Number two, I just completely forgot what I was about to say. Give me a second, I wrote it down. Okay. All of this being said, I think with everyone hating on Persephone and Ruin, I think what bitches are mad about is that like Persephone was real. Like, everyone was fucking hating on her because she wasn't being the perfect little princess that she should have fucking been. And I thought that was like fucking wrong. So I'm like all heated up over here because of it. So I completely fucking agree with you. Persephone's a queen in there. Everyone's just pissed because it's not Cinderella story. There's my 2 cents.
I love you.
No stopping. Immaculate. Incredible. Keep going.
Number 3. Okay.
Keep going, girl.
On my way home today, I was listening. I don't know if you guys heard it, but this song called I Love Me by Haley Steinfeld, or I forget what her name.
Yeah, Haley Steinfeld.
Okay, perfect. That's Hermie's song. All I think about is that's Hermie's song. So if you haven't heard it, please.
Hermie's song.
That is Hermie's song. It goes, I love me and I don't need anybody else. And it's just, I can like just picture Hermes just dancing around. Like, dude.
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
One last comment to my question. Harry Styles' album just came out today. There is a song called Matilda, and that is all about having a traumatic childhood. I've had a traumatic childhood. I think everyone pretty much has. So if so, go listen to it. Just cry. Pull the game of fate. Listen to Scarlett. Listen to Harry Styles. Listen to Scarlett Sinclair. Just cry. Okay.
Just cry. Good advice.
I know. I'm like all over the place.
You're my favorite human.
No, you're like on task. You're not all over the place.
Keep going, girl.
That was number 4. You're good.
Or last thing, and I'll open it up to anyone else. My question is there any of these characters that you kind of already said, but just you think of from your life? Like, are there any people in your life that are like these characters?
Well, I think they're all weirdly pieces of me. Even Hermes, because I think I'm fucking hilarious, and every time I write something about Hermes, I'm like, I am brilliant. Um, so I think I have to think. I'm sure, I'm certain that you know, there are different people that have influenced parts of everyone. I have a bonus mom. Her name's Leslie. She's a psychic, and I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe in a lot of psychic shit and reincarnation, and so a lot of my belief systems fold into these stories. So when I write about reincarnation, I'm writing about it because I actually believe in it, and it features in literally all my books. When Stars Come Out, the series, KBB. So I think like those belief systems, the things I think about death and grief, it's all kind of things that I've heard from her over the course of all the years that I've known her. So I think she's been super influential in my life and in my view of the world. But as far as different things, like Hades, for instance, always wants control over every aspect of his life. And I think the point that I started to become popular as an author was when I was able to say, like, I'm going to stop trying to control this and how it's going to go. So writing Hades is kind of a lesson in learning how to let go. Persephone, she's taught me how to sever relationships that no longer serve me. Severing relationships that no longer serve me is a lesson I learned from Leslie. She has taught me, how to set boundaries with my mom, my brother, and so writing her has really been a huge experience. She's taught me how to grieve. Hermes is kind of, I wish I could be as carefree as him. Sometimes I write characters that I wish I could be. Hermes, I wish I could be so carefree. I wish I had Hekate's wisdom. I wish I had Isolde's, just she has a tenacity that I don't possess yet, and she is unafraid, and I wish I was unafraid. So some of it's wishful, and some of it is, truly things that I have had to handle over the years. But yeah, I think it's just a huge lesson in healing for me. So, but thank you for asking that question. And for all your observations. I love them. I have some songs to listen to now. When you said the Hermes thing, I was thinking I have some bonus content on my website if you're interested. But there's an interview that's conducted with Hermes, and he asked the interview, like, which is my good side, this side or this side? And they're like, this isn't this kind of interview, Hermes. And he's like, just answer. And they're like the left, I think, or whatever. And he says, that was a trick question. You were supposed to say both. Now I have to turn you into a tortoise. And so I just think he's really fun.
Honestly, if you have not looked at the bonus content on our site, you really should, because it's pretty great. Like,
there's some pretty like spicy things in there too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you get a nice gambit of stuff. It's pretty awesome.
It was an old Patreon. A lot of it was from I used to have a Patreon, and then I couldn't keep up with it. It's too much work.
It is a lot of work.
Now you all get it for fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I don't know how you do it.
They know some days I'm not the best at keeping up with it, but I do my damnest to make sure it is as well as I can.
Calls me too.
Yeah. I'll pull people in. But yeah, I think it's I had a question and now I'm totally blanking on it. Oh, but I did want to say, Lucy was like, I can't come off mute because I'm not home yet, but I just want to say I loved the view of Hephaestus. I was really drawn to his character, and I really appreciated the scenes with him.
Thank you. I love him. I think he's I love how he's like sciencey, and like one of my favorite elements about him is how he's making mechanical bees just because he knows Demeter's a bitch. Yes. And I was like, I just think that he's, and I can't tell you that yet. Okay, anyways, whatever. We'll find out.
It's okay. It's okay. You guys are all going to read it. For anyone who doesn't know, what we'll do for Retribution, because we do this for all of our new releases, we'll put chapters in so you guys won't be spoiled. So you can go in and discuss in 10 chapter chunks. And that will be set up starting the 31st. I know some of you already have your copy, but I just want to be respectful of the people who don't. But if you're reading it, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Just so you know. Okay, the question I was thinking of. So I know obviously you write a lot of different mythologies. I know, there's a lot of different things. Is there an area that you haven't tapped into or a storyline that you are just kind of thinking in the back of your head, regardless if it's for your current series or something else?
I do want to get into Norse mythology. It's very weird though. And so I have a bit of an obsession with Thor and Lady Sif, especially since Marvel put Thor with Jane or whatever, and Lady Sif was there and just not just kind of thrown aside. Really, it was really strange to me. And then of course Loki and Sing. But one of the projects that's speaking to me the loudest is this Grimm fairy tale retelling. And so what I think is so interesting about a lot of mythology and Grimm fairy tales is the absurdity of them. They're absolutely ridiculous. Like the storylines are so dumb, but I love them. And so what I want to do is put all of these elements from all sorts of different Grimm retellings into a book. So I'm gonna tell you about the beginning of the story because I love it so much. And I shouldn't, because I'm trying to write Queen of Myth and Monsters. But there's this girl named Gisela, and so they live in this world, of course, near an enchanted forest, because every Grimm retelling has an enchanted forest. But the well in their world goes dry, and they're like, "Why is this well dry?" And she's like, has to figure it out. So she asks a witch, of course, "Why is the well dry?" And the witch is like, "Well, there's a frog under a stone in the well, and if you kill the frog, the water will come back." And she doesn't want to kill the frog because she doesn't want to kill anything, but she does it anyway. And the water comes back, and then she goes to bed, and then she wakes up to these 4 elven princes in her room, and they're pissed off because she killed their 5th brother, who was the frog. Or maybe there are 5 of them, and they killed the 6th brother, who was the frog. So they send her as punishment to live with their 7th brother in a castle in the enchanted woods, and it just gets really fucking awful from there. But so the elven prince in the castle is named Casimir, and I just love it, and I cannot stop writing it. And I wrote this scene with a fairy and stuff, and I just love it so much, and I can't stop writing it, and I have to stop because I have to write Queen of Myth and Monsters.
You don't have to stop.
But anyways, it's kind of terrible though. It's like really vicious, and because what I love is that though those fairy tales are so stupid, they're so absurd, they are vicious, they are awful. People, like, the Cinderella retelling, they cut their ankles off to fit, to fit in the shoes. That's bloody. And so I love the horror elements. So I've been thinking about that retelling and how I'm going to make that work. So I don't know.
I love everything
in my head.
I love
that's
everything.
So cool.
Anyway, all that stuff I told you, that's all from different, all those things are from different, one is like the devil and the 3 hairs, and so they're all from, so it's so interesting. They're like cool. And I just think Grimm fairy tales are so interesting. Like there's like glass mountains in these books, and I'm like, that's cool. Like, what the fuck? Like, I can use that somehow. And she like the I don't know. Sorry, I'm just like, I love it so much. And this is what I do though with all my books. Like I go down these long rabbit holes of like research, like I did with Queen of Myth and Monsters too, like researching mythology and like Vlad the Third, because I really wanted to understand how did this person become like a conqueror, and like he's revered in Romania as a national hero, and why is that? And I feel like he had a true morally gray like character arc, as a human being. So I used a lot of that for Adrian, and so all that stuff just really interests me. So I get really lost in like the research. But I was a librarian for 5 years, so not really that surprising. But anyways.
What everybody in this chat probably definitely knows about Sarah and I is we've met up one time. It was in New York, and we spent an hour and a half in the magic, myth, and occult section.
Yeah.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
And to the
Nice.
point where like some random guy came up to us and was like, so this author's really good for like witches, and I was just like, do you think we're witches?
Yeah. Like
People think I'm a witch. I'm okay with it, but I'm
I
not a witch.
I was not that.
we were not going to correct him, except he
No.
was like, are you guys local? And we were like, no. And our stack of books of just mythology and like, and he was like, how are you gonna? And I was like, media mail. We're gonna ship these things. It'll be fine. Like,
Media Mail is the best. There is a really great book you guys should check out. I've been doing a lot of research on the patriarchy for QMM because,
yeah.
anyways, it plays a huge role. But it's called Witch, and it's by Lisa Lister, Lister, and it's so interesting. It talks about how
Ooh, I love how
essentially
basic
like
the cover is.
women were at the center of culture and revered for their ability to give birth, and how that was corrupted and made into something that is lesser, is seen as lesser
So cool.
by society over time, and why. And it's just really, really sad and interesting, but also empowering. So highly recommend that book. And then I've also been reading a book called, there's a song called, God is a Woman. There's a book called God is a Woman, and or God was a Woman. And that's a very good one as well. And, talks about the concept of like when Adam and Eve, the concept of Adam and Eve and how that really helped, like played a role obviously in oppressing women and everything. So
yeah, it's really
interesting
cool
books.
when you go back and you look at some of that mythology, because you see how it has affected, or you see how we repeated from the past, or all these things.
That's what I find so interesting about it. Like I had to do an interview for my French team the other day, and they were like, why are you obsessed with mythology? And it's a weird obsession, because I went on a tangent about how the Aeneid is so oppressive to women, because it just like killed off Iphigenia and Cassandra and Helen and all these women who actually had really powerful roles, and it was all because for the sake of men in power. And we have a lot of really terrible shit happening in Oklahoma right now with abortion laws changing, and it just kind of feels like we're in that same world. So it's a weird obsession. It's an obsession with how women are treated, actually, and I kind of seek to change that at retelling myths. So
yeah, I mean, for anyone who hasn't had a chance to see Scarlett's post today, you should definitely see it, because it was pretty great, and she was talking a lot about people who I think in some ways villainize the word bitch, which I understand, but also like it's not necessarily something to be thrown around or weaponized, and just assuming that because you don't like the way someone acts, you're like, oh, they're a bitch. And it's like, no, they're being a strong, powerful woman, and you just don't like
it's
that.
a double standard. Because if a man acted the way Isolde did, they'd be like, oh, he's such an alpha male, I love him. It's the same stuff with Persephone. So
I was gonna say it's the same thing with Persephone.
Yeah. I fight it all the time, and I will continue to stand on my soapbox. And people don't have to agree with me, but I have a lot to say about double standards and internalized misogyny. So
yeah, I mean, you even see it with Aphrodite.
Mm-hmm.
I just use bitch as a positive term at all times. So
I think it's more of the when it's placed in a negative light, honestly, and what is wrong with being bitchy?
Nothing.
Yeah,
it usually just means we're standing up for ourselves. So
yeah, I did want to ask, I don't know if I'm sure you are aware of all the beautiful fan art, but have you seen some of the spicy, like the really sexy, not safe for work fan art? If not, I'll send it to you.
Probably not, because if people don't follow me, unfortunately I miss out on things because I'm not tagged in it. I have seen it. I feel like I've seen an increase in art though. So that's been amazing, because one of my biggest dreams of doing this was always to see people bring my characters to life. So there's so many things that are just so surreal to me, and that's one of them. I have such a hard time grasping this, where I'm at in my life. My dad would think it was so cool.
This girl, she's an amazing artist, and she has a Patreon, and it was voted for Hades and Persephone, but they have the horns, and I'm like,
Who is it? Is it
Amelia?
Oh, I don't know who that is.
I can send it to you just so you can see it, because it is. I send it. Sometimes I'll like let Avery see it. I'm like, oh, this is good, y'all.
Someone did these gorgeous portraits of Hades and Persephone, and they were so beautiful. And Elysiana, the one, did the funny caricature of Helios and Hades. But then she did a gorgeous portrait of Isolde, and it was the closest to the vision I have for Isolde, and it was amazing. I loved it so much. It's so hard to take what's in my head and communicate that to an artist, and it's just like, that's the most impossible thing. I cannot do it, and I have no, like, everyone asks me for references or like, who would play these people, and I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah, you're
but
like,
you can tell me.
I mean, that image of Isolde looks very much like Ashley Simone, who just played Kate Sharma in Bridgerton.
I think that was her inspiration. Of course,
I think it was just based. It's
small,
right here, guys. It looks like
yeah,
yeah.
The face, though,
I just saw that one. It's great.
Yeah, her face, like her facial features, perfect. Just absolutely beautiful. I'm really nervous. I think QMM is going to be a very difficult book for me to write, because I have to explore my relationship with my my heritage as a Creek citizen, as a Muskogee Nation citizen, and I think it's going to be very like, it's going to be very rough, because you know, it's like a lost culture, I think, and so I'm not I think that'll be very emotional, and I think I'm avoiding it.
I was gonna say, so that is your next, obviously your next project, or how far into it, or have you started the drafting writing process?
Yeah, I have the first chapter written, which, if you guys are subscribed to BuzzFeed Books, you get a snippet of it, and then there will be a longer, the actual first chapter will be released at some point. So yeah, it starts with impalement, which is fun.
I love it. Well, you have a treat for
point of view. So yeah, so it's going to be hard to write, but fun.
Yeah.
There are a lot of elements in it that have already surprised me, so we're in for something, I think.
That's the best, though. That's like the best thing.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Last call. Any last minute questions, comments, anything y'all want to say? I mean, you guys are gonna see her on Thursday with me, so we're just.
I have one question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so by the way, I love you. You're the best. Your books are awesome. I have actually two in kind of a way. So the first one is in your books for Hades and Persephone, would you change anything or add anything to it in your books? And the second one is, because you're Native, my son is Native as well, and does it come easy as an Indigenous person to make books other than the one that's coming out that you're having a little difficulties with?
So for the first question, no, I think that the story is as it is. I think you always, I think you have to respect where you were at every point in time when you're writing a book. And each of my books, I think, just represents how I've changed as a person over time. And that's how I feel, because I invest a lot of myself in them. So no, but I do enjoy writing like really fun little scenes and stuff, and trying to figure out where they would fit in, or if they're canon. So I do that. So talk to me a little bit more about your second question. Can you clarify, just clarify for me what you're asking exactly? Like, is it easier? Yeah, I think I don't understand exactly what you're asking. Can you hear me, Steph?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
you're good.
Okay. I can.
Sorry. As an Indigenous, family, going into it, a lot of the elders would tell you stories about, histories of how elders lived and the circle and being too spirited. Do you find it easier just because you've had that experience in your life as making stories and stuff?
Okay, so this is where I think this is very interesting. So so I think you probably know, being Indigenous, we all have a different relationship with our tribal roots. And mine is a very distant relationship as far as my family was involved politically, and then like in council meetings, and like they all work for the tribe. But my elders who had those stories were my cousins, and they never talked to me about them. Never like transferred to my dad. So it was like, or I don't know, maybe he didn't feel like he could tell them, because it wasn't until later, I was in college, when I learned that we were part of like the Wind Clan and of Muskogee Nation, right? So there were these little tidbits that came in like the older I got. But I went to like Tribal Head Start, right? And I learned, you know I learned like culture there. But the only reason I know that is because there was a tape of our graduation where we like recited like Creek and, did different things. And, but I don't have any memory of that, because once we leave and go into public school, nothing about Muskogee Nation is a part of our curriculum. So a lot of my friends are closer to the culture. And I think my exploration through Isolde is mourning the fact that I don't have that close cultural connection to Muskogee Nation. I have a distant political, almost socioeconomic and genetic connection. What I mean by genetics is that, and socioeconomic is, I think, you can probably relate to the fact that no matter what you present as, when you grow up in those communities, you still experience the same trials and tribulations that the Native community experiences. So we're poor, we're prone to diabetes, alcoholism, suicide. And so that's kind of where I come from, in exploring that side of my heritage. And it's really difficult for me because, I have cousins that look far more Native than I do. Obviously, I'm white, I look white. People think that the only reason people think I'm Native is because I have high cheekbones. And you get into this situation where you feel like you don't fit in anywhere. And it was a huge consideration for me to even talk about being part of the Muskogee Nation, because I was afraid that people would judge me and think that I was just a joke. I felt like that from both sides. Like white people would think that, and the Muskogee Nation would think that. So I talked a lot about it with my sister, because my sister works for the tribe and is just ingrained in the politics there in the health system. And she talked to, other people in the tribe about it. And we all agreed at the end that it would be a good thing, because then I could draw attention to the Muskogee Nation. And I've been able to do that, which I think is really great. But it's hard to describe the harrowing process I went through just to be comfortable saying out loud that I was part of the Muskogee Nation, which sounds very sad. But among tribal communities, there's a lot of racism. The government has us carry cards that show blood quantum, and it's become a big thing, and it divides our communities even more, when we should just be united in the fact that we have a shared ancestry. So it's a very hard topic for me, which is why I want to explore it through Isolde. But yeah, it's sorry, it was a very long explanation, but I think I have a very complicated history, as so many of us do, who have been colonized by, white people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and and the tribal part in Oklahoma, right? We were just returned to reservation land, so a lot of our laws are changing. And I had to call the police the other day, and because I am tribal and I was on tribal land, I couldn't call the main police department in the city I was at. And then I tried to call county, because I thought maybe county would do it. And then the first thing they ask you is like, are you tribal? And then they give you the number for the light horse, which is our police. And so it took 3 phone calls to get a hold of the light horsemen, and then it took 40 minutes for them to get to where I was to help me. And so so that's the tribal community, because we don't have resources, and people want to laugh and joke about how we have all this money and free healthcare, but really it's just a band-aid on a huge wound that is never going to heal. If you want to talk about a culture that's been stripped,
Yeah. I mean,
culture been stripped.
it's, and I think what's cool about hearing your story and like hearing you explain all of that, it gives a lot of us perspective when we do get your novel, and it helps spread awareness, which I think is kind of the best part. Is, you know, you can take it and just allow it to be a fantasy world, or you can take some of this piece of knowledge and appreciate your story in a new way. So I know we have a little bit of time until Queen of Myth and Monsters comes out, but it's going to be really exciting because we get to think about it in a new way.
I hope that helps, Steph.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And just you speaking about it, it kind of, I hope it shows other people that, you know, this culture, or this, you know, this land of ours, the Turtle Island, is, you know, just, it needs to be aware, because I'm from Canada. So, you know,
I thought you were.
you know, that there's a lot of things happening, especially in Canada, with, you know, the Indigenous missing women and all that stuff. So it just, it just, as you know, as an Ojibwe, you know, family Native people, I just like to hear other people and be people like other natives, to see what other people are going through, like what we're going through.
Yeah. I have a friend, her name is Ateneo Widener, sorry. And she has a display. I have links of it on my Instagram. I can send them to you, Sarah, and you can share them. But she has a display of earrings, one earring from several women. So they just donate an earring, and it's a representation of all the missing Indigenous women, missing and murdered Indigenous women. And missing and murdered Indigenous women are just overlooked in media, and there are thousands of women that have gone missing or so turned up murdered, and we don't have any answers, and the police won't look into it. So
I got chills. I would love to share it. I'll definitely will.
I'll do that.
We have a little tag in our Discord that's just, it literally is called Scarlett St. Clair. So anytime you post or something, I like tag everyone so they get the updates and everything. So just
I'll share that. I think it's it's a heartbreaking but a very important display. So
it's beautiful. Like, it sounds beautiful, but also just like makes you think, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it's us. The only time it comes, I think the last time I heard anything about missing and endangered or missing and murdered Indigenous women in the media, there was an actress who was Native who was found dead in a river in New York, I believe, and that was the last. That was years ago, and it's obviously still happening in a big way. I mean, when Gabby Petito went missing, of course, this young white woman, and you know, but there were so many other people as well who needed that media coverage, and it could have been shared rather than just honed in on the one white woman, the one young white woman.
Yeah.
So we have to. That's a lives matter. You know, like
right.
It's a Indigenous lives matter, and I think that I was in a class in college. I'm sorry, I'm keeping you guys, but
you're okay.
We were all segregated by our ethnicity, essentially, and I was with a group of people who you know, weren't Native, or one woman was from Ghana, and you know, it was interesting because they were talking, the Black people in the group were talking about how they felt like their culture was being stripped away, and what no one ever talked about was how Native culture had been completely stripped away. And you're very lucky when you find, like, TikTok has a great Native talk hashtag. You can find people who are very connected to their culture, but places like Oklahoma, you know, there are little pockets, but nothing compared to, you know, what some other places have. But it's just a culture that's not going to exist eventually. And a lot of our history is oral history, and it's not written down, and it was seen, I mean, it's seen as a bad thing to write down that history. But yeah, so I mean, it's going to disappear. People don't know it.
Yeah. My grandfather's from Oklahoma, and I know he told me that he was native, but I don't know what. So I'm gonna have to ask him now because
there's a lot of options.
Right? I know. I know. I'm like, I have to ask him just to see, you know, because it is important, and it is an important part of our history. And even if it is just the tiniest bit, just to share a light or to allow other people to hear other stories. I mean, stuff's from Canada. It's like, it's, you know, we get to hear a unique point of view.
Canada has a fantastic well, I know a few indigenous people from Canada, and they're just so amazing. And one of my friends they have a place called Fish Camp, and they go there and they fish, and they live a very different, like almost like nomadic lifestyle for like a month. And you know, because it's really hard to get fish and like just food in general in places in Alaska. But obviously Native people know how to live on land. So a little tidbit about the Muskogee Nation is, for a long time it was called Muskogee Creek Nation, and recently we dropped Creek from our branding because Creek is actually a word because of colonization. The British called us Creek, and so it's not necessarily a derogatory term, but it does lend itself to the history of our colonization, so we dropped it.
Wow. That's so interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Things you don't know.
Yeah. Well, hey, like important things, you know, important things to learn. So, well, I thank you for coming in at the last minute on something like this. I mean, it's always,
I'm happy to. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, it's always happy to chat. I'm always happy to chat with you, and I'm glad everyone got a chance to, you know, chat.
Brianna's like, she's just like over there. I think she looks frozen.
She's just like so excited. Yeah. I'll have to send you the fan art just so you can see it. Well, I just sent it to you, Scarlett, which it's definitely an SW, you know, it's but it's a good one. Let me tell you.
I have seen some, you know, some I think most of the ones I've seen have been from Louisiana. So yeah, no, I'm really excited. That's the downside to not letting people tag you. You can't see the cool things.
Well, so this is a Patreon exclusive, so technically it wasn't supposed to show, but I'm like, you know what, it's the author. I'm like, I'm gonna send it to her, so it's fine.
Yeah, I would be happy to just like reach out to her and like pay for a couple prints too. I like to do that as well because I like to frame artwork, and even if it is an SFW.
I was gonna say this is a fun one for you to frame. So but yeah, no, I'm excited to chat with you. By then I'll have, I think, I will definitely be done with Game of Fate and hopefully halfway through Retribution. So all of you guys don't know this, but I will probably be trolling you in the live like I usually do, because I will know things and you guys will get to come back and watch and see my little hidden messages. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, you love doing that.
Sarah trolls too much.
I have fun with it.
Does Sarah troll too much, or does Sarah troll just enough?
That's the right question. So, but again, thank you, Scarlett, for coming, and I appreciate it.
Guys.
And oh no, they
talk a lot.
Listen, I always love it because you're just like, you come on, you're honest, you're raw. We can ask you all the fun questions. We even talk about sex, which is like shocking for this group, but it's okay. We'll talk about it on Thursday.
I have no filter.
Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
YouTube filter is
who I appear to be, and it will never change. So
look, YouTube's filter is the first 5 minutes. You can't, like, I don't know why, but it's something with like ads, and then you're good. So once I get to the 5 minute mark
from that,
I'll be like, we're 5 minutes. We can say fuck now. Like, we're good.
Okay.
Literally,
I do actually need that because
I'll let you know.
It's my favorite word.
We did a live Wednesday, and it was all crack theories, and she was like, okay, at 5 minutes I will let you guys know, and we were all just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And then once we hit 5 minutes I was like, we're good. Like,
and then like at 5 she goes it's the 5 minute mark, and I went, thank fuck.
yeah but it'll be fun. So I'm excited. Game of Fate is still one of my favorites in the series. And I know Game of Retribution, Scarlett knows this. I've been waiting for a very long time for this book. So I'm so excited that it's here, which I can't believe I haven't even
really
started
ready for a Game of Retribution. It's very different.
Oh no.
Very, very different.
Please. I like all your stuff. I'm not concerned at all. I'm
I
probably
hope
gonna
you guys
go
enjoy it. And yeah, I really look forward to the chat. So
yeah, and I will send you some great comments for anyone who does anytime like we do these things. Like I send it to Kelsey Sutton and everyone. I'm like, okay, here's a little positive comment. So once it's out, if you get a negative comment, you get tagged in one, you can always look and I'll send you some positive love because people will always comment positive love in there. So yeah,
well, I
I'm
appreciate
excited.
it.
Yeah, well, have fun tomorrow in
I
DC.
will.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I don't know what to expect from it. So
Yeah.
I just, we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be great.
It's going to be great.
I get to meet the girl who does the tandem reading guides. You guys, I don't know if you guys know, but there's a tandem reading guide for A Touch of Darkness and A Game of Fate. And she's going to do one for Ruin and Retribution. And she's coming to this tomorrow. So I'm really excited to meet her because she didn't have to do that. But I think it's going to be really hard to do the one for Ruin and Retribution. So I admire her dedication.
Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. Scarlett was like, are you going to do the tandem? I was like, no. I was like, I love them as standalones. Like, I just think they're so good.
I wouldn't do the tandem and I'm the author. So
yeah, it's impressive. All right. Well, thank you guys. And this is recorded. So I'll put this on Patreon so you guys can have it. So you guys will be able to access it. But yeah, have fun. Thank you again. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, everyone.